Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Unflawed Masterpieces. Well, we've talked about major symphonies. We've talked about fantasias and things like that. And now we're talking about miniatures, but miniatures of a very special type. I'm speaking about Dvorak's Bagatelles for string trio and harmonium. That's two violins, cello, and harmonium. Opus 47. He gave them an opus number. This is a 5-movement suite that is of extraordinary lyrical beauty. People say that it's salon music. And it is. It was music meant to be performed at the home of one of his friends. Said friend didn't have a piano. He had a harmonium. Hence, string trio and harmonium. But, leaving that aside, one of the things that distinguishes great music from less great music is that great composers take works written for special occasions or for special circumstances, not as throwaway useless things, as, say, Wagner did for his American Centennial Overture. No, they take them as opportunities to achieve greatness within either restricted forms or restricted means, some sort of unique circumstance or criterion that actually becomes a source of strength. And that's what happens in these pieces. Dvorak is not content to just write 5 little sniglets and leave them at that. The piece has its own unique form. You can't criticize the form when it's unique. It's its own special structure. In other words, the opening theme, the opening melody recurs in one way or another, sometimes varied in the first movement, the third movement, and the fifth at the end of the finale, which is a rondo. In all other respects. And so the piece has internal unity. That alone marks it as something pretty special, as a miniature masterpiece, which is no less great for being miniature. And it's not all that miniature. It's around 18 minutes long when you play the whole thing. It's as long as a lot of classical symphonies. So, it ain't nothing. Let's put it that way. But beyond that, what it has is Dvorak's unparalleled lyrical gift. Dvorak was the greatest melodist of the second half of the 19th century, certainly. After Schubert, he was just unbelievable in coming up with glorious, wonderful, singing, haunting, passionate, thrilling melodies. And if you can do that, as I've said many times, 90% of the battle is already over. You've won the game. The only question is, do any of these melodies fall at all below the top rank of Dvorak's melodic output or anyone else's melodic output? And the answer is they don't. They're absolutely gorgeous. You could listen to them hundreds of times over and never get sick of them. And then there's the actual setting of the melodies. Harmonium, what a strange instrument. Dvorak knew it well. He was actually a church organist. He was quite familiar with the harmonium. It was an enormously popular instrument for home performance back in the second half of the 19th century. There were all kinds of them built by all kinds of people. The way it operates is that it has pedals, what are called treadles, actually, if you want to call them that. You pump them, and they juice up a bellows, sort of like an accordion, And, it's also known as a reed organ in the U.S. And you get, it sounds a bit like an accordion, actually. And you get long, sustained tones and wonderful little, slightly accordion or organ-like sounds come out of it. And Dvorak chose his forces quite carefully. The two violins are able to play duets with themselves and with the cello. The cello adds a certain resonance to the bass as well as its own melodic character when it gets the tunes. The harmonium is amazing for sustaining harmonies, atop which the violins can cavort with, lyrical glee. It's a piece that sounds like nothing else in the entire repertoire of 19th century or 20th century chamber music, and it's uniquely successful as a finely honed masterpiece. There isn't a single note you could change. There isn't a single dead spot or misjudgment in terms of timing or shape or function for any of its movements. It is a lyrical bouquet of gorgeousness. And as such, it is absolutely flawless. I dare anyone to say otherwise. It's fantastic. It's really very interesting, too. You might say it's easier to do miniatures that are unflawed because they're short. And because if they're essentially lyrical, you don't have to worry about like larger forms or, grandiose ambitions and huge climaxes. And I think that's true. I think it is actually easier to do that. But the fact that it may be easier to write perfect miniatures, it does not mean that any less genius or compositional craft goes into them. I mean, you can still do second-rate work no matter what the job assignment is. And what's really noteworthy about these pieces is that they are little polished diamonds of musical expressivity. They truly are absolutely perfect in all respects. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.